This is Writer's Voices with Monica and Caroline. I'm your host, Monica Hadley, and with me is my co-host and mother, Caroline Kilborn.
And good afternoon, everyone. Another beautiful day in Iowa. A little warmer, but still awfully nice.
I know. We've had really an incredible summer this year.
Oh, we have.
Yeah.
We still got some to go.
And the sun's shining on, if you're listening to us on Friday, I get a reminder from one of my favorite listeners occasionally that I need to remember that not everybody's listening to this on Friday. So if we're talking about the weather, it means nothing to them.
Right. Right.
So if you're listening to this on Monday morning, you missed
you can mention the date.
Friday. That is true. Today is
It was 58
August 2nd.
degrees or something the other day. This has been the mildest summer ever.
So our guest today
Anyway.
is Mr. Steve Rudy Wilson, who has, I think this is at least your third time on Writer's Voices over the almost 7 years that we've been doing this show.
Yeah.
So welcome back to Writer's Voices, Rudy.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you called me, and it's fun to talk to you.
Yeah.
You're very knowledgeable, and we were friends for a long time.
Yep.
We're like kind of Fairfield career people.
Yep. Yeah, we've been here.
I've been here
forever.
several months.
You've been here several months this
yeah.
time around, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Monica was with, she came here in junior high.
Wow.
Yeah, 1972.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
when we moved here. So I guess that dates me, doesn't it?
Yes, it
If anybody was wondering how old I am, you can figure it out from there. Today we have the great pleasure of talking with one of Fairfield's, maybe in a sense, the best known writers. He's shaking his head, but there aren't too many writers here in Fairfield who were published by Gordon Lish, who was the famous editor at
Alfred Knopf.
Yeah, at Alfred Knopf.
I don't know how to pronounce that. Knopf.
Yeah, K-N-O-P-F.
Boy, that was a stroke of luck. It was just like from 84 to 94, it's almost like my stars were all out. I remember once Seymour was talking to Buddy in a Salinger story, and he goes, when you were writing, were your stars all out or something like that, But it was just like miraculous. Everything I wrote went gold. I couldn't believe it. And then, bam, 94, that was pretty much the end. Like, wow, you're over.
Wow.
And then there's been things since then, but those 10 years were good. And Gordon Lish, to get that in his hands.
Wow.
And it was great. And he said he took it to France for a month, and he goes, trust me, it was a difficult edit. And he cut it from 440 pages, typed, which might be, I don't know what in the book, 350, down to, it's really pretty short novel, 178.
Wow.
But he didn't write anything, which I'm glad of. And he told me, I didn't like what he did. I was very depressed for a while. I said, I just can't live with what you did. He says, all right, fine, fix it. Do what you want, and I'll accept it. And I did what I wanted, and I chose the title. And I remember him writing me, and he goes, oh, Rudy, excellent. He always said this, excellent, Rudy. Excellent title.
Oh.
Because, we had a few we were going to name it. It was, so.
And the title ended up being?
The Red Truck.
Yeah.
Which I've ridden the wheels off. I got to move on. I got another book that's been out for a while with, I would say, I don't want to insult anyone, but maybe one of the worst publishers that there is. And she's actually even personally angry at me all the time. Because I kind of pushed her a little bit. So let's do something. Let's market. Let's get reviews. Let's move it, And she's a one-person publisher, I think. She has a few people with her. Good cover. It's called Ravenna, not Ravenna. That's the devil. Ravenna Press in Spokane, and they published another book called Sonia's Blue, which is a collection of short fiction. Most of them published, some of them not. And then some other shorter things here and there.
Well, one of the things about marketing books today is that and this is a difference between when did the Red Truck come out?
Oh, originally 87.
87. So one of the things that's changed is that the publishing companies don't really market for writers anymore. Even certainly not small publishing companies.
No.
I
But
thought
even
that was one of the main things they did.
You'd think.
But
I would be
no.
happy to help too. I sent out hundreds and hundreds of emails to independent bookstores when I had, I guess it was Sonya's Blue came out or something. I didn't get many. I didn't sell many. I got a check once for $2.87 royalties.
Now, is the Red Truck still in print?
Still in print, and so
And
I
do you
feel
still
good
get
about
royalties on that?
it. I got a check the other day for $48.
Wow.
And I think 12 people had
bought it?
had bought it. But it's in libraries, and I just
Yeah.
am glad there's a band in L.A. called the Red Truck because they liked it.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's kind of got a weird cult following. It's still out there a little bit.
Now, at one point, there was some talk about a movie.
Oh boy, we got about 3-4 hours. Richard Beamer and I had been really basically, I love him. He is such a generous soul, always kind to me, and he's been doing he did the David Lynch thing in India, so we've taken a lot of breaks. It's been like a few years, but we've been working on a project for 17 years, and it's a movie called Rudy, which is kind of, sounds very presumptuous, but it's really about, I shot about 30 hours of it, and he shot about 50.
Wow.
It's basically our lives about two guys who wanted to make a movie of the Red Truck but couldn't. And so it sounds silly, but it's kind of covers their lives over many, many years. We have all this footage of so many years, and he is a master editor. I mean, the way he puts things together are just amazing, and he makes it work. And he's shooting a few scenes as if he was going to do the movie. He's shooting 4 or 5 different scenes, and he's invested a lot.
So it's still going.
It's going to happen.
Wow.
He'll do it. And I'm pushing him a bit, but he's slow because he is so meticulous. We'd be driving to Walmart at like 11 miles an hour. I go, hey, man, let's go. And he goes, oh, Rudy. He always says that to me, Rudy, be patient. I said, well, I want to get there, whatever. But he's a wonderful man, and I think it'll be a really fascinating film. It'll be out one day.
Yeah.
Couple
So
of years, maybe.
it's a documentary style?
It's documentary style with, now he's adding some non-fiction, like cinema, from scenes that would have been in the entire movie. So he's shooting like 3 or 4 actual scenes.
Yeah.
Rachel Wendell was in one of them, and he's gotten some people from Iowa City, and so he's shooting a few scenes that would have been in the movie if we had done it. And those will be like, cinematic.
And so there was at one point an intention to make a movie of the Red Truck.
Yes, we wrote script after script, and in L.A., and I'll never forget one night about 3 in, he was on the floor, just with happiness. He fell to the floor at 3 a.m. and he goes, "We've got it." He said, "This is better. This is as good as Fellini. We've got it." And that was like 7 more scripts to go. And, so I think we have a script finally, and I don't know. I don't think we'll ever shoot the real movie. No, it's just too much. We did do some.
What
The
makes it
whole
too much?
thing. We went out and shot a Civil War reenactment because there's a chapter on the Civil War. And we got we were up in trees shooting, both of us, because we wanted to get out of their way. And it was, it just didn't look real. You had these Civil War guys like wearing Nikes and stuff. And so it was sort of like, It didn't really work, and we got some good shots though that we edited out of it, of like horses, just a close up of a side of a horse or the sound of it, and like I said, he edited that in a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's coming along.
Oh, it actually sounds pretty fascinating.
Well, if I know Richard, it'll be a really fine, interesting film. Yeah.
You were in another film of his some years ago. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Oh,
I went and saw he did a film of I know he did one of the big festival in India.
But I remember he showed it, downtown, and I came there. What was that?
Yeah, and then there was one that was about Fairfield, I think, or about characters in Fairfield, or something.
Yeah, and
or maybe you were in the one about the Indian thing, talking about enlightenment and.
That was it, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to remember. It's been a while. Wow.
Yeah.
It's been like 10 years ago or something.
At least, maybe more.
Yeah, so it's hard to remember, but I remember being there, and he left the room. He's a very reclusive and kind of, I think he's kind of shy. I think he's got inferiority and a bit of superiority. In a good way, though.
And you kind of hope he's not listening to this.
No, I love him. He knows I love him. Superiority only in the way that he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, he has said a few things that he wished his career, he didn't feel he really did what he wanted to do. But he did some major films.
Yeah, he was in West Side Story, and of course he's
the
been
lead
known,
of West Side Story, and Diary of Anne Frank, The Longest Day, where he was, I think it ranks, and my brother and I had this elaborate ranking system, which would take forever, but it's funny. But he is ranked, if for nothing else, he had a dialogue with Richard Burton in The Longest Day for 5 minutes.
Wow.
And not only that, but Anne
so
Frank
that
was
ranks him. That gives him high
that
ranking.
alone ranks him. But
Yeah.
the lead of West Side Story, he's forever ranked.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you think he has a similar feeling like you were just talking about, where there was like a time in his career where everything was golden, and then
I think he did actually, and he was on the Andy Kaufman, some show, the Andy Kaufman. And sadly, it was called a show of has-beens.
Oh.
But it was a comedy.
Oh.
And he had Richard was his buddy.
Okay.
And he came on, and Richard kind of played, he played it. Like, I has-been, and I haven't made a movie in 17 years. He did have a 17-year gap but he shot 23 films. He's a major filmmaker. So he shot 23 Hollywood films.
Wow.
I don't even know which ones they were. And the great thing, real quick about Richard, it's just a karmic thing about him. When he was like 10, 11 years old, he was in Italy for some reason, and or a little bit older maybe, he eventually was the person who brought Sharon Tate to America as his girlfriend, and introduced her to some Roman Polanski, who married her, and then it didn't go so well for them. But he was in a line of about 200 or 300 boys, and Victoria De Sica, who did The Bicycle Thief and is a master, went down the line and stopped at him and pointed, and he said, "I want you." And it was a movie with Jennifer Jones, Montgomery Clift.
Oh, my God.
It's something, what's the name of it? Something like The Dreams of American Wife or something. I'm sorry I don't have the title, Richard. But it was, that was it. And he was young, and he started out his career then like a young boy. It was a good movie. And, but like I said, later he hooked up with Sharon Tate, brought her to America. I never, ever have mentioned that to him, but I guess now I am, and I know it's a heartbreak for him, so I don't want to dwell on it, but it wasn't his fault.
Right.
He had nothing to do with it, but
wow. So wow. Well, talking, it's interesting because here's this person who's been living in Fairfield for many, many years, and I think a lot of people are kind of aware that he's here, but I had no idea that he had that much success in filmmaking.
Yeah, he's a great filmmaker. Shot all those films in Hollywood, and he's gone on to do other films. He's done some great. He did a wonderful independent film with some people, and it hasn't been released yet for some reason. It's been years, but it was a really. He said his best thing he ever did.
Wow. Well, that doesn't really sound like much of a has-been.
No, he's no has-been. He is never. He is busy every minute of the day.
Wow.
You know.
Well, this is maybe a good time to segue. We're talking about films. You had another film you wanted to mention. You told me that you wanted to mention Deja's film.
Oh, yes. Wow. Well, we got to bring Deja Bernhardt up because she's a child of Fairfield, born and raised, and lives in Austin. She's in a very special program in Austin that only accepts 12 people a year. She won, I think I mentioned it already, she won an Academy Award for new filmmakers. So she's up and coming.
She did?
Yeah, in L.A. It's a big thing.
Like an Oscar?
It's like an Oscar for new filmmakers.
Okay.
Young or whatever. It's not the real Oscars, but it's serious. It's a major award. And she came here, and the name of her film is Returning to Ananda. And it was so much fun to see her here in town. She's a great director. I couldn't believe it. I mean, she really was powerful. She's no kid anymore. She's like, 30 or something, or whatever. And she, had the boom mics, and they had serious cameras. I mean, it was very serious. And it's about a girl who comes back to a small town to kind of try to return home. You can you come home again kind of thing.
Right.
And it was the pilot. And she shot the whole thing here. And she gave me a little 1-minute part just for fun, and it was such a joy to watch her run the whole thing.
And what were you playing?
Oh, I was just
was it scripted or unscripted?
It was unscripted. She goes, Rudy, I want to stick you in this. So I was sitting on a bench, and as she walked by, we looked at each other as if we were real close or had been, and she was with her new boyfriend. That's part of the movie, some guy, and we did high fives and a sweet thing, and I supposed to turn and look at the guy with a dirty look, and I don't know, I didn't do it that well, I don't think, but she said, yeah, you did all right. We did 2 takes, and that was it. She goes, yeah, it was dirty enough. And so it was good to have her that she did that.
Now, was the rest of the pilot scripted?
Yes, I think it was, and she shot it all here. And if it makes it for like HBO or somewhere, she's trying to market it, she'll be back and shoot many, 10, 12, 13 more episodes. And they'll all be shot here. So it really could be a big deal. Yeah.
Now, were most of the actors from... Did she bring them?
She brought some serious actors from Austin, from her program.
Yeah.
And she used some locals, of course, and filled it in. And it was really fun. It was just a lot of fun to watch and see her.
And when was that?
In her power. That was this summer, like June or something. Yeah.
All right. So you'll keep us informed.
You'll find out. If she comes to town to shoot a feature film, it'll be all over the
Or
news.
it's a TV series?
TV series, that's it. More for she's trying to get on HBO episodic thing.
Yeah.
And but you never know what'll happen to it.
Now, what's the concept of going home back to a small town? Is there more to it than that? Is there something what's the real?
Well, that's a good question.
What's the conflict? Is she running away from something?
I don't know. I don't know. She's probably running away from possibly a life that she has had, and a difficult life in the big city, of some abuse and some problems and just the hassles. And so she was a girl who thought, I want to go home, and I want to see if I can make it in a small town and be happy and all that, and settle down here. And so she tries it, and I'm sure there's got to be a lot more to it. They're going to have to show the past and even her childhood, maybe. And
now, is her in the show? Is her family still here? Her parents? Her
father is in Texas. Steve not Steve, Ed Bernhardt.
No, in the show, not in real life, but
In the show, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't think her parents are really featured
of it,
particularly.
okay.
I'll find out. You know, she didn't really clue me into the whole thing.
Yeah,
really.
yeah, interesting.
She was busy as heck and couldn't spend much time, and it was wonderful to see her, though.
You're listening to Writers' Voices with Monica and Caroline, and our guest today is Rudy Wilson, who actually was our last-minute savior today, as when our pre-scheduled guest fell through at the last minute, and I called Rudy, and he said, yeah, I'll come. So thank you once again for saving us today.
Well, definitely, and I wanted to mention a friend of mine. Her name is Julie. Maybe I shouldn't say her last name. I don't know. You know, she lives in Vermont, and it's quite a story. We were extremely close when we went to University of Kansas in the early 70s. You know, we had kind of a relationship for a few months, and then that was sort of it. It was never a bad breakup or anything negative, and I just sort of drifted on and did my life and the movement and on and came here. 40 years later, she contacted me, and I think it was because she heard one of the Writer's Voice podcasts.
Seriously?
Yes, absolutely. And she contacted me. Goes, "Do you remember me?" And I went. At first, I was a little like startled, and I go, "Well, yes." And we have been in a wonderful, intimate friendship. I mean, she's married and lives in Vermont, and she's great, and a really kind of a wonderful friendship. And she reminded me of something that I think is kind of funny, that I had forgotten about. That a friend of mine, I sent him a copy of The Red Truck, and his sister read it and had seizures over reading the book. Now, I think that's a little extreme. I mean, perhaps she was not that stable to begin with, but it might be.
Blame your book.
It could be a selling point. You know, some people have seizures when they read the book. I think a lot of people be running down the street to read it.
Well, yeah, because
You
if it
know.
has that much impact.
You might get the fringe audience.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't know. I mean, I thought it was just funny. You know, someone, wow, had a seizure of reading the book. I'm sorry. I don't think it was that harsh. You know, it was kind of a love story, really.
A very violent love story.
It had violence. Yeah,
Yeah.
it did.
Yeah.
We won't have to dwell on that. Though. There's new things, many new things.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've had quite an interesting career.
Well, it's been fortunate, and it has been interesting. I've written like 9 novels, but only published 3, and 3 that I like quite a bit, and I'm still sending some of the other ones out. And I have a new book called, we've been over this, Exit Angel.
Yeah, I think that the last time you were on,
It's
we
a
were
pretty
working on that
intense novel, and I meant it to be. It's way off from what I usually write. It's not language, literary oriented, which was what I learned at the workshop in Iowa, you know, very languagey. And I love language so much. And so generally I try to play with language and make it poetic and stuff like that. But this one is not really, it's got that to it, of course. I can't help it. But it's a harsh, hard movie. Girl with a Gun, I could call it. It's incest, revenge, murder. And it does not hold back. And the ending has some really interesting twists that I will not reveal, and quite intense, painful, lovely, wonderful love story filled with all manner of things. And I'm trying to polish it up before I send it out again.
Well, it sounds like the world to me.
It's kind of the real world, you know, like
that's
there's
right.
real problems out
Yeah.
there, and she's in them, and she doesn't take no for answer. She carries a gun, and she means business. And I love her, and it'll be interesting.
Now, was this, you talked one time about one of the characters from, I'm not sure if it was one of your novels. I think it is the novel Shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was she the one who came, like you're sitting on a bench and she just sort of
Yeah.
appeared to you and she stayed with you? Was this character in in this new book like that too?
No, I wouldn't say that at all. The shiny thing was really an amazing phenomenon. It really did happen, and but that's my favorite book, and it has not been published, and that's one of the big. If I feel like if I could get shiny out there with a real publisher, I could die happy. Because I think it's the best thing I've ever written, and I love it. But I've published pieces of it. 12 or 13 pages were in a literary magazine, and so a little bit's been out there, and that's something.
What do you think has kept that one from getting picked up?
I have a friend in town who says the beginning of that book is so amazing and riveting. It's like a prologue. He said if you could have kept that voice through the whole novel, it would have won like a Pulitzer. It would have been the best. Pulitzer, or whatever you call it. And I didn't. I shifted voices to the girl's brother. And it's a little bit not as lovely, not as good. And I know that. And I just don't have what it takes to go back and rewrite every line. I just don't want to.
Yeah.
I kind of like it as it is. And so it just.
But even if that could make it a huge success?
Well,
You're not
if
willing
there's a
to
big
do it? Yeah,
if,
there
it's a
is
big
that
if, because I want to try to fix Exit Angel, and I look at Shiny sometimes and think, oh, I could do it, I guess. I'm 87 now, and I don't know if I have
You
much
are
time
not.
left. Well,
No way.
no, not yet.
Okay, how about self-publishing?
I'm old school. And I know it's the new way. It is, the internet, of course. You don't have to say how powerful that is. We know that. But I've got a thing about ebooks and self-publishing. Like I said, old school. I want a publisher to like me enough to pay me and publish. And I just do. They don't have to pay me much, anything, but just to acknowledge and help me with the marketing.
Yeah.
But I might, ebooks are the thing, so I could easily go that way.
Yeah.
But then, marketing's everything, with everything you have. If you've got the greatest book, and I've got some stuff out there that nobody knows about, and it takes a lot of money.
Yeah.
I've contacted people that would do it, but they charge like $3,000 or $4,000 just to get off the ground, and so marketing is everything.
Yeah.
With every product.
The publisher that you had didn't do anything with the marketing, though.
No,
did
she would. That's why I was upset with her, and why she is not really quite friendly with me. And I'm trying to get a new publisher, so I'm sending them out to other publishers.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one in mind, a new agency, and they're reading the books right now. They've had them for a couple months, and they're going to get back to me. So if they take it on, it'd be very good.
Now, do you go through an agent, or you go direct to the
I
publisher?
try to go through my agent, New York lawyer, woman, New York City, and God bless her. I think, lunch costs like $100 in New York. And the red truck, she made $600, I think. And that was good, but she always has the same, it's like a form letter, but verbally.
Yeah.
So, Rudy, I love it. I love what you've written, but I just can't do it. And she says, I can't get behind it.
Yeah.
But I think she's really saying is, I'm not going to make a dime.
Right.
And I have to earn a living in New York, and I haven't talked to her lately, but Exit Angel kind of blew her mind. And Rodney Charles read it. Mm-hmm. And he said, I love it. I really like your writing. Your style is fine. But wow, it wore me down. I really like it, but I can't do it. And he currently has Shiny.
Does he?
Yeah, and I think it's much softer. And he might go for it.
He might go for that. Well, actually, that's a good. But Rudy, I understand your hesitation about self-publishing, because the downside to the revolution in self-publishing is that there are so many books being published now that it's very difficult to get attention for yours.
And I would like to say, I think it's kind of lowered the standards.
Exactly.
I mean, anybody could write a book about like a 300-page novel about a chair. Now, if it's great, then great. That's a good book. But if it's horrible, they can still get it out there. And so we're just inundated with all these books. Not that they shouldn't have a voice. Everybody should have a voice.
The great thing about self-publishing on the internet and print on demand is everybody can get published.
It's
the
great.
bad thing is everybody can get published.
Exactly. I mean, in the old days, you had like Henry Miller, Hemingway, Faulkner, like 5 guys in the 30s and 40s or so. You know, and there were more, of course.
Yeah.
And now there's just like,
well, even
so many.
Kind of what you call mainstream publishers, traditional publishers maybe is the better word, because they vary from the Penguin Books and Alfred Knopf and those guys down to the very small Ravenna Press or
Iowa Review. A lot of Iowa Review has a book press. I think
Ice Cube Books. There's a wide range, but even just among those, they publish tens of thousands of books a year.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
And it's getting it out there is the thing, but I'm
getting the distribution.
And the authors, they join in. There's marketing. There's things you can do. You can get it out there.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, with the net, you can reach thousands in 5 minutes.
Yeah. But the quality is still, when I pick up a book, first of all, when I pick up a book that's been self-published, I can almost always tell by the look and feel of the book. Unless they've done the smart thing and hired George Foster to design their cover.
No. Yeah. Well, he's good.
He's
good.
great.
Great.
Yep.
Well, the first sentence will tell an awful lot. It really does.
But the typeface tells a lot, too. The color of the paper. There's all these
feel of the paper, everything, the quality.
Yes, yeah. There's all these little details that do you notice that, Mom, when you're?
Yeah, well, there's such a variety of, like you say, paper qualities.
Yeah. And
the cover, it doesn't catch your eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, if it looks weak, and
right. Or if it looks homemade. But then even one that's done professionally, that they've hired a cover designer and they've hired somebody to lay it out and so forth. Sometimes it's not that the writing isn't good, it's that they have bypassed the real editing stage. The thing that Gordon Lish did for you.
Oh, yeah, like real editors.
Real editors.
And these days I noticed that it's so important. In the old days, Dostoevsky or whoever, all the old writers and American writers as well, Theodore Dreiser, I don't know who to think of right now.
Tolstoy.
But they would take like their time.
Oh, yeah.
And it would be like pages even of like the weather. But now it's like writers right off the bat have to have a snappy first sentence. And it's just maybe because of our short attention span. Not many readers will deal with a new book that has 2 pages that are about the weather or slow, unless they're masters, I remember Salinger said something once. If you can write a story about a pair of shoes or something and make it fantastic, make it art, then you're a writer. Because if you can make it riveting, it's not about the topic, it's the language, the way you present it and all that.
Right,
So it's always still about quality.
Right.
You have as many ebooks as you want. You pick it up, you don't like it, you won't buy it, or So it's quality still is out there.
Well, speaking of editing, I edited a book a friend of mine wrote, and several people had already read it. And I read it. I mean, I edited it from a English teacher standpoint.
Well, there's that, yeah.
So there were quite a
You
few
were an
things.
English teacher?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
Me too. Yeah,
so there were quite a few things that I caught that they didn't.
Yes.
Because I was looking at it from
Well,
that
punctuation. I used to make a joke with my class, and I don't mean to sound at all graphic, but I had a little bit of a loose, not scripted lecture. I used to teach at Indian Hills. The punctuation is more fun than sex. And that got their attention.
Yes, I'm sure
It really did.
Yes,
They're
I'm
like
sure
sleeping in the back, and they go, "What? What you talking about?" I said, "Well, imagine the semicolon." just imagine what that could mean in a relationship. I mean, you're lovers, or you're together, and then there's a pause, but knowing there's more to come, or there's so many, the ellipse can mean so much, and but oh God, the parenthetical aside. Think what you could do in a parentheses, So I just went on with it, and they enjoyed that, and I liked it. It was funny. And
how long did you teach at this school?
Until they fired me. When they came in and heard that lecture, that was it.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
No, I finally did leave for a romance back east. I just had enough, and I had a new director who was kind of tough. The head of the program, the original one, just hired me on the spot. He liked me personally. His name was Dana, someone I can't forget, but his last name. But it kind of changed, and I was kind of ready to move on, and I headed east for a wonderful romance that was wild and crazy, and I wrote a book about it, and I've tried to sell it, but nobody has picked it up yet.
How many of your books are based on your life?
Well, I would probably say all of them.
Yeah.
And maybe most authors. It's impossible almost. Exit Angel, it's not, I don't think it's about my life at all.
Okay. And Shiny, is it about your life?
Well, only in the way that I loved her so much, and I could relate to the brother's feeling towards her. And I think I threw in different characters here and there that I felt were part of me. But no, it really wasn't. And the red truck, it was, I think.
Well, now, Exit Angel, the version of it that I saw, which at that point was called Girl
Walking Backwards.
There were flashbacks in that of the man going with his mother, taking care of his mother as she was, and she was ill and so forth. And I definitely got the feeling that was from your life.
Well, that's a big topic. We need to call my shrink, who is a wonderful man, Dr. Pomfrey. I just like to plug him because he's such a kind and good man. He helps everybody. And he works all the time, too much to help so many people. But, my mother, it was about her to some degree. The mother in Shiny commits suicide. And my mother, this is kind of harsh, but she attempted serious suicide attempts when I lived with her as a boy, me and her alone, and was a severe alcoholic. And it was really no picnic. I grew up pretty fast. Ambulances, and sometimes I was alone, like 2-3 days. I wouldn't know where she was. Wow. And I wouldn't go to school, and I was like pretty young, at that point I was already like 13, 14. But it I grew up pretty quick with that, but she did pull it together very well, and went on always a very successful woman, and had a great life as an AA for 30 years and did well,
As an AA? What's
Alcoholics Anonymous. She got it together and went and did it.
Wow.
And was in the Laguna Beach with the guy named Clancy, who is the most well-known AA sponsor. He really is. You ask any AA person, you ever heard of Clancy? And they go, oh, yeah, Clancy's the man. Yeah, he's a big wheel. And she was in the Southern California, Orange County, whatever area group, and it was a big deal, and blah, blah, blah,
that
it's really off topic, I guess.
That organization has probably saved more lives than
maybe millions, actually, literally, and the families. And so many people are touched by it. It's a very difficult. They say it's harder to quit than heroin.
Yeah. Now you have a brother.
I do. What an unusual.
Where was he during this time? Was
He
he older and
saw
gone?
what was coming and hit the road. He had been in a terrible, terrible car crash were three. He didn't have many
I think
friends.
that's in
He was
Exit
a-
Angel too. The brother almost dies.
I think it might be. Yeah. My brother was kind of a quiet type, bookworm a bit. Wonderful. I loved him so much. I still do. He's my favorite person, really. And he was in a terrible accident. 3 boys were killed and all that. And it was just too much. They were his only friends.
Oh.
And it broke his heart. And the next thing I knew, he saw, though, what was coming with Mom. And he just hit the road and moved to San Francisco in like 66. The good years, It was really weird, I got to say it, though. I mean, here he was in this terrible car accident, and they never knew if his brain was injured or not. They never really said it, but he was in a coma for like 2 months.
Whoa.
And the minute he got to San Francisco, he took acid. He probably took it 300 times. So, we're talking about an unusual fellow. He wouldn't do it now for anything. He's almost what I'd call a fundamentalist Catholic. He's just so in love with his church and Hilo, Hawaii, and he's doing quite well. So,
Well, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
All right.
But yeah, he wasn't driving in this accident.
No,
was
thank
he?
God. I
No,
couldn't
that-
imagine
that
living
would-
with
no.
that.
Yeah.
He
You
couldn't.
probably
I
never
don't think he could
recovered.
handle the. He has guilt enough that he survived, survivor's
Wow.
guilt.
Yeah.
Oh.
But to drive and thank God that he wasn't.
Yeah.
And the details are horrific.
So these little kind of bits of history make their way into your books, but
Sure.
in disguised, not. It's not like. Have you ever actually thought about writing a memoir?
Yes. Well, yes. And maybe I even have. I have some things. I have something that's kind of a memoir, but it's been tucked away so long. And one thing real quick about that accident I've always wanted to write about, because I think it is just amazing. My dad, and this was right before he kind of left the family, which I don't blame him. He saw my mother where she was headed to. But he had to, it was unbelievable. I'll never forget it. I drove up on my little moped up to the house, and I saw the police at the door. And my father's reaction was horrific to whatever they were saying, and it scared me. And they said that my brother was dead because they were in bathing suits. They were teenagers. Their wallets were all over the highway, and they were mistaken. And he had to drive an hour with the police to the first funeral home. And they got you got to identify the body, and it wasn't him. Imagine that. And then he goes, okay, well, we have 2 more bodies. And he had to go to 3 funeral homes, and none of them were him. And he finally was like out. He said, well, where is my son? He said, well, we do have a boy at the KU Med Center who's next to death. And my dad went there, the police took him, and he was just laying on a cot in a coma, dying. And he made a ruckus and got a doctor, and he was, did all that. And I always wanted to write about that. I
That
thought
you
that would be
should.
a pretty intense story
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
about what he went through. And I think it was kind of the end of the marriage and everything else. And it was right around when the Beatles came out and JFK, and everything blew up then. We all went our own way, It was a wild
But
time,
you were
wasn't
just
it?
a boy.
I was just a boy,
You were
I
just
guess.
a boy.
Yeah.
Well, Rudy, you've like Mom says, you've had a really interesting career, and you had a recent little success, and I mean maybe big in
it's a
some
nice
ways,
one.
but yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, it's amazing, really. There was a friend of mine on Facebook, which is the new, people say they don't even say, I want to get online. They go, I want to get on Facebook, But her name is Dawn Raphael, and we talked once in a while. I didn't know she was a publisher. And she read something I wrote, a very short thing, 300 words. I put it somehow, she read it. I sent it somewhere. I sent it to a magazine, and she was the editor of it. It's called The Literarian in New York. And I don't know a lot about it. There's not a lot about it online. I've heard that it's big. Some people say it isn't. And so she said, I really love what you wrote, and would you accept $100 for it? And I thought, well, you better believe it. $100 for 300 words, I'm ready to go. You know, having only made, $40 on 2 novels, I was shocked. And I
Show me
guess
the money.
something about it touched her. I don't know. I just sat down and scribbled it out one day and sent it out.
Well, why don't you read it for us?
I will. I hope my voice is holding up. Yes, the name of it is Blue. But now I felt dirty. I was never the same after those nights and the leaving. I grew old. I became a very old man. I lost the ability to laugh. And I didn't cry either. I survived. But that song I just heard softened me, teared me up, and I noticed some small blue, perhaps robin's eggs, broken on the edge of the sidewalk. Dead little baby birds, I assumed. I looked at those blues for a time. Then I remembered my father. He was a good, kind man. I wanted to live, and I knew the only way to live was to be present now. And I'd been so lost in regret and future fear, I realized I was not living at all. I stopped and stooped down by the broken eggs. It was just us then. I thought of an old man singing a song, his song, holding on to what had been an entire life, with a childhood so long ago, and all the small details, friends and fights and dust and dirt and parents and schools and aging and manhood and maybe a wife, maybe a divorce or two, and then old age, and then in bed or struck down walking on a dark sidewalk, a heart betrayal, a loss, a moving on into the real darkness. Then I saw a girl through a lit window with the shade up, her back and long hair ponytailed down to her bare back. I watched and stood in the dark. Then she moved away slightly and came back, her bare back still to the window, and she had a violin with her and began to play. I stood in the dark near a wide tree and watched as she played her heart into that beautiful brown violin I could just see, tucked under her fragile chin. I stood and listened and went into a knowing there is beauty in this world that saves us.
Oh, that's... yeah.
I think it needs a little editing, really, in the middle part.
I don't know.
No, I don't know either.
That
I
was
don't
Rudy
either.
Wilson reading from Blue, which was published in the Literarian in
Coming out in the fall.
coming out this fall. Yeah.
So we'll just see. Thank you for letting me.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you
yeah,
for sharing that.
Yeah, that was...
Now,
neat.
let me ask you, as you said, you just sort of sat down and wrote that. Did you edit at all? Do you edit as you write? Do you do fast first drafts and go back? And is it different for a short piece like this than for a novel? What's your
This
writing
is funny.
process like?
It's really funny. It's a great question. I've been very interested, by the way, in a singer named Jenny O. She's California-based, and I just find her to be just fantastic. And I have an interview set up with her, and I can't wait because I'm really kind of infatuated with her and all that. And she, I forget what that has to do with this. I really do. No, she.
Writing process, editing.
Yeah, I was remembering years and years ago from the Parish Review I was lucky enough to be in, and I won some award from it, which was amazing. The editor, Mona Simpson, who went on to write several novels. I remember her once, we did an interview on the radio or somewhere, me and Mona and Jay McCullough, who was a wonderful editor there also. And they said, Rudy Wilson is the only writer I know that doesn't have to edit. He just sits down, writes it, and sends it out. And it's not really true, I do edit. And sometimes I can get too involved with an over-edit, but I generally know when to stop, It's done. That's it,
That does seem to be some people either don't edit enough or they over edit. It seems to be very difficult to find the right.
And I would say always cut that last paragraph off. I know it's a funny thing. I just thought of it, though. So many things that I've written myself, and I've seen other things, they try to tie it up with a bow or something, or wrap it up. No, just leave it. Cut that last paragraph off. Just let it be, and let the writer, it's almost like you're driving a car, and you hit a wall, and you keep going. God knows where, and not in a negative, I mean, it's so negative, that was in that movie. It was heavy with Jeff Bridges, whatever. But cut that last paragraph off and let the reader go with his imagination, their imagination, to where it's going to go. And I think that's why books are so great over movies. I love movies. I mean, I really do, of course. I mean, they're the new world literature in a way, and not many people read. But the novel allows our imagination to just soar. And we can so fall in love. But I had a book I read recently called The Book Thief. And I slept with that book for so long until I got, this is silly, poison ivy. And I started worrying, and I got rid of it, of course, long ago. Don't worry. Yeah. And I thought, what if it's on the book or something? So now the book is on the floor by the bed. But I loved that book so much. And the character was just so amazing that I slept with the book against my heart. I mean, and then, later at night I might find it, somewhere weird,
Yeah.
But I just was in love with The Book Thief, and I recommend it highly by Marcus Zusak.
Wow.
It's the best thing I've read in 20 years.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, Rudy, believe it or not, we're out of time.
No, well, we've I hope I didn't talk too much. I tend to talk too much.
Absolutely
not at all.
Absolutely
Well, thank you.
not.
I've loved being here.
I'm really glad that you're able to join us today and help save writers' voices today.
Yes.
And
great.
before and Mom, do you have some closing words of wisdom
I
for
do.
us?
I like this. Life will sometimes hand you a magical moment. Savor it.
If you're listening online, check out the rest of our podcasts. And if you really loved what Rudy had to say, we've got a couple more podcasts online with Rudy and some articles on writersvoices.com that he wrote. So check those out too. And see you next week on Writers' Voices.